Alright guys, getting ready to put the new distributor into the car, and I just wanted to show you once again one of the overlooked parts of putting a distributor in. This small little indentation here was the notch that I put in to line it up against the block, as there is a similar notch right on the block where the distributor goes into it, and this is going to allow me to retime my distributor housing as I insert it into the block. As all I have to do now is match the two indicators there, and that will allow me to keep the distributor housing in the same orientation as the original. Now, if you notice on the new one, since it's totally smooth and newly machined, and they did a really nice job of machining this smooth, which is a much nicer casting than the original, or the one that was in the car. You can see here that there is this piece of the casting here with a point here right in the center. Now this one has the exact same casting, the exact same point. Now this has a mold line that comes all the way down to the base where it contacts the block. So I was able to use this mold line, and the distance between this and this, the indentation that I put in, to follow a similar, although a lot less obvious mold line here, line it up on the base, and then from that determine where my notch should be. So I marked that with a permanent marker, and this will put me in the ballpark of where the original distributor was, so that I will only require minor tuning of the distributor as I have it in the block and the engine's running, in order to time the car optimally. So it's just one of the things you have to look out for when you're changing a distributor in one of these cars. Okay, we have our O-ring seal installed now. We're just going to lubricate the seal, lubricate everything here as it goes into the block, and that should make it a piece of cake for us to reinstall this. Alright, so now we're going to talk about the ignition module. I recommend only using the original GM ones, which are readily available. AC Delco. These are the numbers, and they are still made in the USA for the most part, although you will find some that are made in Mexico. I'm not sure if they're made anywhere else. Hold on. Whoops, I think I'm holding it wrong. Nope, that's it. That's the ignition module. Here's the numbers for the ignition module, still available from AC Delco. And here are the numbers for the pickup coil. Again, still available from AC Delco. I got both of these from Amazon. Original AC Delco parts. Both still made in the USA. So we're going to install our ignition module, brand new one. We're going to be reusing the bolts from the old distributor because I'm not really a fan of using the those Phillips screws that they came with. Now let's talk about the grease that it brings. Which one is it? This one here. Now most ignition modules are going to come with this tube of heat sink compound, dielectric grease, whatever you want to call it. The stuff is okay in a pinch. I prefer not to use it. What I like to use is actual heat sink compound. Arctic Silver was my favorite. This thing worked great on every car that I've used it on. But I've recently moved up to Icy Diamond. Quite a bit more expensive, but from what I've heard, it's the best thing you can do for your heatsink protection on your module. So this is what I use from here on out. Now, basically all you're going to do is spread a little bit on the bottom of the module. Make sure you get a nice coating on the base, and then just install the base into the distributor, and you're done. So we're going to take care of that, and then we'll be back. Now, what I like to do before I install it to make it a little bit easier, as the one thing that's going to fight you the most going in is this rubber seal, is that I like to soak it all in some oil, get it all nice and lubricated to make it a little bit easier. And then basically it's all about just lining everything up. You don't have to worry about your orientation to the block just yet. Making sure that it drops down. What you have to worry about is getting your rotor in the right position. So we're off by a tooth or so. Let's see. And no, we're still off by a tooth. Let's see. Now we're off by another tooth. And no. We're gonna have to see how close we can get it. You may not get it exactly because it is a whole new distributor. But you're gonna try and get it as close as you could to your original mark, which I think is going to be there. But we're not fully seated yet. So now we just have to work it down to the bottom of the block till it seeps on the block. And I think we're there, and that definitely was made easier by lubricating the seal. So now we're going to match our mark. That's the first mark. This is the second mark to our mark on the engine block, which is right there. And I think we are in a pretty good shape. As far as the new distributor being in, and in approximately the proper location, as we're aimed directly at the mark we put there, and we're lined up on the mark on the bottom there. So I think we're in pretty good shape. So now the next thing to do is we're going to put our clamp in. But before I do that, let me show you guys what I mean about marking the engine block. Okay guys, we're staring right at the base of the distributor where it contacts the block. Now you can see my black ink mark on the base of the distributor, and just below that ink mark you can see, let's see if we can come in a little more. You can see that mark on the block just below the ink mark. That is the mark that I made signifying the position of the original distributor. So that mark on the block lines up with the mark that I have on. Whoops, whoa, zooming in a little too much. This thing's got crazy zoom. Is where you'll know you have the distributor housing timed correctly. And now you can see the rotor is pointing right toward my mark on the fuel line going to the cold start injector, which means that as this distributor sits now, it is almost exactly where the old one was. And that's exactly what we want. Alright, so now we're going to install our clamp. We're not going to tighten it down just yet because we may need to move the distributor as we check our timing at the end of this whole procedure. So what we're going to do is we're just going to install the clamp and run the bolt in. And just put it in finger tight. pick up our flashlight. And as you can see, I did install a washer on it because I wasn't really crazy about the bolt just sitting on the clamp. There was no washer on it initially, but I think this is going to work better. So there we go. We're all in. Now it's all just a matter of reassembling the distributor, installing the ignition module. Well, doing that first and then reassembling everything on the distributor, and then we're good to go. And reinstalling the coil exactly the same way as we took it apart. Alright guys, so now we have the distributor fully installed. Our ignition module is back in, everything is connected. We have our harness going back to the car already set, and we just need to install our ignition coil, the other connector and harness going to the ignition module, and reinstall the cap and rotor, and we're pretty much done with this. Alright guys, now we're gonna start putting it all back together. Now that we have the distributor in the block, we're gonna just put everything back together. So just the reverse of the way we took it apart. So just hang out for a second here while we start putting everything back in. Okay guys, that is all it took to put it all back together. And now that we're all back in, we're gonna have to loosen up the clamp. We're gonna go through the entire procedure of timing the engine and making sure that we have the distributor and everything all set up properly on the next video. So for now, this is going to be the end of this one. And we'll get it running next video, and you guys can see how I time it and everything that has to go along with that. Alright guys, I'll see you on the next one.